we call a hydraulic calculated sticker that's required to be on any hydraulically calculated system. And I would say from 1980 forward, the majority of systems are hydraulically calculated. Before that, they had what they call pipe schedule systems, which so many heads were required on certain size pipe. 2 heads was 1-inch pipe, 3 heads was 1.25 inches. Those things have gone by the wayside, and we still run into them occasionally. But just be aware that they're out there. The hydraulic signs tell you exactly what the system was designed at, the pressure at the base of the riser. When you do an inspection and see a hydraulic says you had to have 60 pounds at the base of the riser and you only have 30 pounds on your gauge, right away you know you have some potential problems. Here's, they come in various companies, have different layouts and different types on them. There's just 2 of them. But, they basically have the same information, the year the system was installed, what it was designed for, pressure requirements. So we're getting calls quite often that, hey, come and look at our riser, we see no hydraulic sign, can you help us with that? And about the only way we can help if you don't have the original design drawings is we'll have to go back in and do a risk analysis assessment, actually calculate it for you. And insurance companies are getting more apt to do that. So from the public, I understand you guys are all county stuff, but the general public, we're finding that's more and more of a problem. This is the inspection tag itself that's required to be on there annually. Now, part of the requirements of that is that tag must have that state fire marshal seal on it. And as you can see by this, here's the signature of the inspector, his technician certification number, and he's punched out, here's the date, the month and year, and it was inspected. It wasn't installed, means the original installation, and if he just done maintenance on it, he may tag both inspected and maintenance if he does them both at the same time. Quite often on the back of these tags, depending on the individual inspector, he may write the results of a 2-inch main drain. He may write the results of what he finds with these antifreeze tests. So, get in the habit of looking at the back of these too. They're a valuable tool. This is what we call the red tag system, and this is required by the state when we find that a system fails to meet the minimum requirements of NFPA 25 to ensure a reasonable degree of protection for life and property. Once an inspector places this tag, you as an owner cannot remove it. There's only 2 people that can remove that tag once he places that. It's either himself or the fire official. And so the fire marshals tell me that they have issued fines for owners removing this tag. Don't do it. This system here was actually red tagged. I don't know if you can see from there, but it's because the alarms were not hooked up and functioning. Doesn't do you a bit of good to have a wet system and have the alarm part of it out, because you're not going to have a bell, you're not going to have notification to anyone. And if I recall the previous, presenter, I think that was part of the problems that they had is, they didn't get that early notification. So you want to make sure that that system is going to work. In addition, down here, you also would put a thing for other and said painted sprinkler heads. And the only reason he put that on there is that's really not something we will red tag the system for unless a majority of the heads are actually painted. But 1 or 2 will usually tell a maintenance guy, hey, replace these heads or we'll do it for you. If we do it, it just obviously is going to cost a little more. And here's the ways we do testing the systems. Right here, this gentleman's doing a standpipe test on top of a building. And yes, we do flow on top of a building. You'd be surprised at the number of the drain systems we find on high-rise buildings are plugged when you start putting water there, or they're separated. So you know, it's a good indication, but it's a bad way to find out that your drainage system isn't working when we're flowing 500 to 1,000 gallons a minute on top of a roof. This one here makes me laugh here, that we've got the FDC in the main drain, in addition to all the vegetation right here. I mean, you've got all these gas lines right there. We see this quite common, but do you really think a fire guy's gonna go hook up to that with that gas line right there? I don't think he wants to be anywhere near that. You know, that's one of their pet peeves all the time, they tell me. Here's a full discharge system here on a transformer. Yes, we can put water on a transformer and it doesn't blow up. And I had electrical guys out to a power plant told me one time he didn't want to put water on a transformer, and I says, kind of amazing, you must live in an area where it doesn't rain then, huh? Says, because nothing more than a big rainstorm. So, the one on the left here is testing the fire pumps. And quite often we find fire pumps over a period of time, you know, they don't operate near as well as they used to, or, you know, they may have a rock in an impeller or something, or a valve can be partially closed. You know, it's very rare that we do an inspection, and Kent's back here smiling, but he's always telling me, well, I can't get this thing to work right. And we found some of the dangest things in casings of pumps and valves. So, and again with the hydrants on the right here, we test the hydrants, make sure they work. We did one power plant here in Utah, and we found over 15 fire hydrants were not in operation. Kind of a scary thought for me, knowing that they go to the expense of putting these things in, and then they wouldn't even be able to use them, so. And it's required that valves be accessible. And I get a kick out of the one on the left here is, you know, when this system was installed initially, I'm sure they were accessible. Over a period of time, they'd done a remodel, and contractor thought, well, we'll cover those ugly valves up to the owner and make it a nice wall. The only problem is, it made it so nice that we could drain the systems or anything else. Yes?
There's also another scenario with that too, that when contractors come in, you have to have a firewall. And so you've got a fire problem with the wall being exposed to the air that goes through there to source other rooms. So they have to require to put a firewall on there. But then when they open it up like that, so they get the valves, then their firewall is gone. So
Right. Well, if it was originally built, that firewall should have been an issue that was taken care of at that
that's
time.
right.
Yeah, and we see all the time where they go in and add walls, and add mezzanines and offices and warehouses, and, you know, actually I think they ended up putting some access doors in these so, you know, they could get them in, you know, where they could get to them down the road. And here again, here's beautiful fire department connection you can't see right there. Here's some, I wanted to show you some examples of what we find is good when we pull the flushing connections off of some systems and bad. You can see, you know, the system on the right obviously is plugged up with stuff. The one on the left, actually it was installed before the one on the right, but been maintained properly and it still looks in good shape. And when we do the internal inspections on valves, some customers want to do their cleaning and maintenance themselves, and if that's what you prefer, we can do that. But, you know, I just recommend that if we're there with our professional guys, just have us do the cleaning at that point in time. This is before and after on the clapper right there after we've cleaned it. Yeah, the top one's a small check valve clapper. We replaced the gasket. You can see the strainer on the bottom. It's pretty well plugged up on the left. Again, we clean it, make sure it's operating correctly before we leave the site for you. This one I have to really laugh at. This is just about the end here. I call this our ultimate dry valve. We got called out by a customer one time. It was a trucking company, and they couldn't make their dry system operate. Well, we went out and found that, I guess one of their maintenance guys got tired of maybe the system false tripping or something. And he was really ingenious. See this rod and this plate right here? He set this on top of the clapper inside the valve. This is a front view of it. Here's the top view of it. Here's that rod coming up. He's devised this little device with set screws that would, if that valve tried to trip, it would push it up tight against the top here, never allow that valve to operate. So I don't know how many years that system had been in service with the control valve wide open, everyone thinking that they had a system that was in operation, but it would have never operated. So just a word of caution there. And in summary here, I just wanted to stress a few things here again, is sprinkler systems are installed because they're usually a code requirement. And we have to make sure once they're installed that we use the appropriate and adopted inspection standards to test and maintain the systems. And the building owner or his designated representative is responsible for maintaining their fire protection system. You can hire that be done, you can have your own qualified people do it, but ultimately it's that owner that's responsible. And then we only have to do the inspection and maintenance as a reasonable level of life safety. We want to make sure that that system will operate if it's needed. And then on the annual 3 and 5 years, make sure you use certified inspectors by the state at the appropriate level of certification for the system you have. Because if you got a level 1, you know, doing a deluge system around a transformer, he's not qualified for that. You're liable at that point. So that being said, here's the last slide I get a kick out of. We took all of those rocks out of that supply line right there. So, you know, I just stress, you have to make sure this system is going to work. I know you don't want it, but by gad, it better work when it's called upon. So, any questions whatsoever? Well, I don't believe no questions. Thank you.